Welcome everyone to the 4500 South and Atwood Boulevard online public hearing tonight. We're going to go ahead and give people a couple of minutes to log on and to join us. But while we wait for more people to jump on, please find the sign-in section on the webpage that you're on now and provide your information so that we can have a good record of who participated tonight. If multiple people are joining from your computer, please go ahead and include their information in the sign-in fields with your own. The demographic questions that you see there are optional, but we are asking them in order to comply with Federal Title VI Civil Rights Act. Please fill those out if you're comfortable doing so and select all demographics that apply for you and those attending with you. You can also access reference materials for tonight's meeting and for the project as a whole under the Supporting Materials tab on this webpage. You can also review the How to Submit a Comment tab for details on how to provide a formal comment during tonight's meeting or afterward at any time during our 10-day comment period. If you have any questions about the public hearing, the technology that we're using, or the proposed project that we're talking about tonight, please feel free to begin typing and posting them into the chat box to the right of the video screen that you see. You can see that we've already got some questions coming in there, and we'll be sure to address those as we get through to the presentation. If at any time you can't see any new questions or anything happening in that chat box, you may need to refresh your webpage to make sure that it's working properly for you. We'll be monitoring everything and we'll answer as many questions as we can throughout the meeting tonight. We'll first go verbally with trying to address questions very thoroughly, and we'll provide any written follow-up or responses to simpler questions there as appropriate. If you've enlarged your video screen to full screen mode, just simply return it to its regular size at any time to regain access to the chat box and to other meeting materials. I want to point out that this meeting is being recorded and will be available on this public hearing page that you're on now and on the U.YouTube account for anyone who may have missed it or would like to go back and review it one more time. We've got a couple more people that have jumped on the line, so we'll go ahead and get started with our presentation. Welcome again to anyone who joined us since we got started to the 4500 South and Atwood Boulevard online public hearing. Tonight, we're going to share information about the proposed construction of new traffic signals at the 4500 South and Atwood Boulevard intersection in Murray. We invite all of you as members of the public and attendees tonight to submit formal comments on the proposed project improvements and on the corresponding draft environmental study, which can be found under the Supporting Materials tab on your screen. While this online hearing is a little bit different than it normally would be if we were able to gather in person, we still have various ways that you can engage with our team and provide formal comments and feedback this evening, and again over the next 10 days during the official comment period. If you do have any questions during tonight's presentation, again, please type them into the chat box. Our team is on the line and prepared to answer questions verbally or via chat as appropriate, and we'll be tracking those items closely as we go. Next, you can provide formal comments during tonight's meeting through voicemail, which I'll explain in a little bit more detail here shortly, or you can mail or email your formal comments into our project team. This information is also saved on the webpage that you're on under How to Provide a Comment. Now, in terms of providing a verbal comment tonight, the verbal comments that are provided will be played publicly during this hearing. You'll need to use your phone to dial in and to leave the comment. If you wish to do this, use your phone and dial 855-925-2801 and enter the code 5419 when prompted. You'll then press star for more options and press 2 to record a comment. Don't forget to mute your speakers if you're joining us from your computer before you call in so that you don't get any background noise or feedback as you're doing so. Just want to remind folks that this comment portion of the meeting will be meant to mimic an open mic format that we would normally see in a more traditional in-person public hearing. So the idea is that you can leave your feedback in your public comment and others will be able to hear your input in real time as we play that back into the meeting. When you record your comment, please clearly state and spell your name and record your comment for up to 3 minutes. After you finish recording your comment, you can then hang up and rejoin us on the computer if that's how you're viewing the meeting, or you can simply press pound to return to the meeting if you're only listening via phone. After our presentation tonight, we'll go through some questions and answers, and then we'll play the voicemail recordings back into the hearing so that everybody can hear. Please note that we will not be responding officially to individual verbal comments this evening. Responses to all formal comments will be included, however, in the final environmental document, which will be available and published on the project website when it's complete. We will be answering questions as we go, like I mentioned, so please be sure to send those in through the chat feature. Again, this meeting will be recorded and available on the YouTube account for the Utah Department of Transportation and on the public hearing page that you're on now. Next, I want to introduce our presenters that we'll be hearing from tonight about this project. First, we'll hear from UDOT Project Manager, Aaron Wall. Aaron will then be followed by Marcus Bennett, the Project Design Engineer. And my name is Katie Corianos, and I'm responsible for communicating with the public throughout the project. In addition to these folks, we have other team members on the line ready and available to answer questions as those come in. Those team members do include Brody Snedden, Kimberly O'Reilly, and Eric Lyon with UDOT's right-of-way acquisition team, Tyler Allen, the UDOT Region 2 Environmental Manager, and we also have Chris Sawislak with us, representing Murray City's Engineering Department. Murray City is a really important stakeholder for this project as Atwood Boulevard is a city road, so we're really glad to have him join us tonight. With that, Aaron, I'm going to turn it over to you to give us some background on the purpose and the need behind this proposed project.
Sorry for the delay there. Yeah, the main purpose and need for this project is, it's one word, it's safety. 4500 South carries a lot of traffic. It has a high 85th percentile speed, and that associated with the traffic and all the accesses along 4500 South just create a host of safety issues. UDOT has been working on this for many years to try to identify some things they can do. The traffic signal study was completed in 2020. It did warrant a signal, and it's UDOT's feeling that the signal will help improve safety. It will also give a place for pedestrians to cross. Right now, there's quite a span of road where it's very difficult for anybody to cross. In fact, we've had some serious injury crashes, and I think some fatalities with people trying to cross 4500 South through this stretch of road. The signal will help address that. And so that's the main purpose of this project, is to increase safety. This is not a capacity project. This is a safety project to help improve safety along the corridor. I think what I'd like to do now is turn the time over to Marcus.
Thanks, Aaron. So as you see here in this figure, we will be adding signalization to each leg of the intersection. So each direction of travel that you approach the intersection on, you will see a traffic light that will control the movement. When we make these kind of improvements, it often requires us to realign the sidewalks and ped ramps in the immediate vicinity of the intersection. So we will be doing that. And we will also be installing those crosswalks at this intersection so pedestrians can cross at this location. It will facilitate north-south and east-west crossings that will be signalized for pedestrians as well as vehicles. On the north side of the intersection, this was a bit of a challenge for us coming into this intersection because there are two different driveways at that location, and we can't have two separate driveways to be controlled by different signals. We need to have one signal to control one movement on the north side. And so we are moving forward with combining those driveways into a single access. So it will be one leg of the intersection. Yeah, they're on the north side. Also on the south side, we will be flattening the radius of the corners going onto and off of Atwood Boulevard. This is to facilitate speed change between 4500 South and Atwood Boulevard. I believe Aaron has our next slide here.
There are property impacts associated with that. All four corners of the intersection will be impacted. We won't be taking, there will be no full takes, they're just partial impacts to those four property owners on each of the corner. Those will be the only impacts. The Atwood impact Boulevard on Atwood Boulevard will end right there at the end of that first property owner. And then the other side of Atwood on the southwest corner will be that one property owner there. So in total, we have 4 impacts. We've met with all 4 property owners. They're aware of the project, and we're working with them to try to minimize the impacts as we lay this out and design it.
As far as schedule goes, so you see here on the first line, right now is the public hearing. We've come to the public at this time at a point when we have a pretty good idea of what we're moving forward with, yet before we've moved forward with acquiring property. That was a good time where we knew what we were doing and wanted to make sure we got this input before we move forward with property acquisitions. So that's now, and a public comment period, as Katie said, will extend through the 14th. So for the next 10 days where we can receive that comment. After this public hearing process completes, it allows us to move forward with right-of-way acquisition. And that right-of-way acquisition is largely going to control the time frame of the project. We expect that will be wrapped up by winter. That we will have access to all of the property, and then we will be moving forward with utility relocations. Now, if we do get some of that property cleared earlier, which would be great, we might see some of those utility relocations happen a little bit earlier. But in general, we expect most of the utility relocations that don't occur concurrent with construction to be through the fall and the winter, and then construction we plan to see in the spring and then the summer. UDOT has another project on 4500 South, and we're working on collaborating with that one to make sure that our contractors work well together.
Great, thank you so much, Aaron and Marcus, for that information. I'm hoping before we jump into kind of this public comment period to listen to live comments that we could address some questions that are coming through in our chat box. We've got a handful of questions here that I want to start off with. I think we might go with one of them actually that asks, how far south does that turn lane on Atwood go with our new project? I think that you did mention that as you were going through this, and I can pull back to it, but I want to share a different drawing here that actually shows the entirety of the project and the limits of that. So like Aaron mentioned, we're just going with the project slightly past this first property here. And Marcus, can you talk a little bit more about what these designs mean laid over the map?
Yeah, so what will be happening is the existing through lane, we're going to taper the lane over to become a through and a right turn lane. So we can have a separate left turn storage pocket. And the reason why it was important for us to get this left turn lane in here is because it allows us to have much more efficient signal operations. The signal engineers don't like it when we combine those lanes at the intersection because they aren't able to manage the flow on 4500 South as well. And so that's why we have that separate left turn lane there. And it's about 70 feet long. And it's about another 100 feet after that in which the taper occurs over.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Marcus. A couple of other questions are coming in. Let's see. A few that I think we really need to spend some time on are for our residents there on the Atwood Boulevard section of this project. Really, the question is, what is this going to do to traffic on Atwood Boulevard? Have we looked at any traffic information to help us identify what will happen to traffic on Atwood as a result of this signal? I'm wondering if we can hear first from Marcus on whether or not we have any study information about that, and then maybe from Chris at Murray City to jump in on that. I think there's a couple people, it sounds like, have spoken to the city already about the need for safety improvements here. So in general, supportive of this happening, but want to know a little bit more about the implications, if any, on the residential street here on Atwood.
Yeah, Katie, so as part of the typical signal warrant process, they do counts at this intersection, which does include counting how many vehicles would be turning onto Atwood. And so we do have those numbers. And we, as part of that warrant process, there's several different criteria that need to be met, and that was the focus of the signal warrant study. There have also been other studies that have focused on the speeds on 4500 South and on the pedestrian volumes and facilities on 4500 South. As part of the typical signal warrant process, we wouldn't generally analyze what we would call network impacts. And we wouldn't be expecting to create any capacity problems anywhere else as a result of this improvement, which is why it wouldn't be part of the typical process to analyze network impacts.
Thanks, Marcus. Chris, could you add to that from a city perspective and kind of looking forward?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So in general, this is, I'm participating on behalf of the city. I'm coordinating with them as part of the engineering department. Obviously, the Murray City Engineering oversees access to the roads, and we partner with UDOT on many things. Primarily, from the city's perspective, from my perspective, this is a UDOT safety project. It's an intersection project. The city has no intention to extend anything from this intersection further south on Atwood in the near future. We are currently in the process of developing a transportation plan, and anyone who's listening and interested, you can access that at murraytransportationplan.com. And we have open comments currently going right now for any comments about further south on Atwood. But again, this is limited in scope to the intersection and making safety improvements that we, as part of many regional studies, have found that we need some pedestrian improvement here as well, because the only pedestrian crossings are State Street and 5th East, and this is a valuable mid-block crossing.
You know, Chris, and as part of those studies that have occurred, so yeah, they really have focused on that safety element you talked about. And as far as pedestrian crashes go, there have been 8 pedestrian crashes that have involved pedestrians at this location, and 4 of those have become severe, including, as Aaron mentioned earlier, there was a fatality at this location previously. And so it's that data that has caused UDOT to come back to this intersection time and time again to analyze it to see if there's improvements that could occur. There, outside of pedestrian crashes, there's also a vehicular crash problem. And they've found that there are 32 crashes here that could be corrected. That's one of the results of the studies, is that 32 of the crashes over the last 10 years could have been corrected by a signal. And so that's where the studies have focused to date.
Great, thank you so much. We have another question that came in. What is the other project on 4500 South that you mentioned? I know that was one that we spoke about actually just earlier today from the department standpoint. Aaron, is that one that you could speak to, or Marcus, on that project, the future project?
Yeah, it's my understanding it's a resurface. And if I understand, Marcus, is it an open grade surface course?
Yeah, a 1-inch OGSC. Yeah.
Okay, so what that is that's resurfacing the road to preserve it to extend its lifespan. And that will be on 4500 South. So it's not capacity related. It's not necessarily even safety related. It's more of a maintenance thing that UDOT does with its roads over the lifespan of a road. And so it is a bigger project as far as money goes, because it goes further up and down 4500 South. We want that surface through the intersection as well. And so we're working to make sure that we get our project done in time, so when they come to resurface it, they can resurface our project as well, and it'll just work better that way. So that was the other project that Marcus had mentioned.
I did want to jump back to one of our first questions that came into the chat box. There was a question about our notification process. and whether or not we notified everyone about this meeting. I can take that question on and say that, we do the best that we can do within our means to try to reach as many people as possible. In this instance, really focusing heavily on the properties closest to the intersection that we're improving here to try to really kind of target those most directly affected by this. In addition to some broader means of communication through a notice that we're required to put in the Salt Lake Tribune, as well as some communications that went out through Murray City channels and UDOT existing channels and websites as well. Completely understand that sometimes people do get missed with some of those things. We do everything we can to try to avoid that. But those are the things that we did to get notification out about this meeting in particular. So just wanted to highlight that a little bit. I think there was a question too that came in via email. Similarly, just wanting to be sure that they were apprised of this. Again, it sounds like we've had some property owners and residents who have been asking and hoping for some safety improvements in this area and want to be sure that they are looped into the plans and the project. And this is the time for sure to provide your input and your feedback as we're going through this environmental process. This is exactly what this meeting and what our public comment period are for. So please, if you have anything else to add or to ask, continue to use this chat box or to call in and leave a voicemail comment. We'll play those back as well. It sounds like we had potentially some problem with the voicemail comment, but that's fixed now, so great. Again, up on the screen here is the instructions to provide a formal verbal comment tonight that can be played back into the meeting for everybody to hear. For anybody who may not be able to see my screen, you can do that by dialing 855-925-2801 and entering code 5419 when prompted. Then press 2 to record your message. You can record for up to 3 minutes. We ask that you please state your name very clearly and spell it if you wouldn't mind so that we can get a good record of who left the comment. Checking now for a couple of other questions. I have a few questions that have come in. Just let me pull this up so we can make sure we're getting all of them. I want to go back one really quickly, and I know we talked about this in kind of the overview and the property impacts that go along with this proposed project. I'm wondering if we can click on that one more time. We did have a question come in about someone concerned that they may have put improvements into their property before this project was coming. So just wanted to reiterate that this single parcel here on this corner, as well as this one here on the east side of Atwood, will have property acquisitions and temporary construction easements. That does not go further past into any additional properties past the corner. That's the same for this north side of the road as well at this time. And anyone, I think, as we mentioned, that will have any kind of property impact has been contacted as part of the process already. We have another question. Will there be left-hand turn signals? Will they be regular lights or lights that are traffic triggered? Marcus, is that one that you can help us with?
Do you mind repeating the question?
I can read it again for you. Will there be left-hand turn signals? Will they be regular lights or lights that are traffic triggered?
So northbound and southbound, there will not be the left turn arrows. There would just be the green balls. And we just presented to the region traffic signal engineers the design, and I'm just going to double check before I answer this, what we included for northbound, southbound, or sorry, for eastbound and westbound. Yeah, so for eastbound and westbound, we've presented to UDOT traffic engineers to include flashing yellow arrows, and that's what we're planning to move forward with right now.
Perfect.
So that's when you have the four heads and you have that flashing yellow sometimes, and then you get a green arrow sometimes.
Thank you, Marcus. Question that we've had a couple of times is, will you be raising or adding raised islands as part of this project on 4500 South or anywhere else for that matter? Marcus, can you address that one?
Yes, we are not adding raised islands. I started with yes, as in I can answer the question. No, we are not adding any raised islands with this project. UDOT had a project several years ago to do that, and it was not successful based on community input. And for that reason, we have not included that with this project.
Great, thank you, Marcus. A couple of other just kind of design related questions that we have here. There's currently a power pole on this north side right here in the middle where this new design lays, and a UTA bus stop just to the other side of this. What are the plans for those two elements as this project comes in and kind of changes things up here?
So for that power pole, that will be underground. Murray Power will be running the service to the two property owners that have power on it underground at that location. So there will no longer be a power pole there. That's a major element of this project, and there's been a lot of work thus far to ensure that that's possible to happen by several groups here. And as far as the UTA stop, that was actually considered for relocation when there wasn't a path to get a signal or a pedestrian crossing at this location. But right now now that there will be a pedestrian crossing here, there aren't presently plans to relocate that, but we still do need to work with UTA to make sure that we're on the same page with them and figure out what their intent is for that.
Great, thank you, Marcus. We have another question that's come in. If you only have flashing yellows, what is the improvement over the existing condition, Marcus?
So what's really great about flashing yellows is that it allows when there's this really cool trick that they do that the traffic engineers have been doing lately. When they see that there are safety issues at particular times of the day, they only run what we call protected phases. So perhaps, I mean, what I would expect between 4:30 and 6 o'clock, vehicles who are making a left turn may end up becoming more aggressive as they're trying to spot for gaps if there is that flashing yellow running. And so the signal engineers won't time it to have that flashing yellow arrow. They'll only have it so that it's either a red arrow, or a steady yellow arrow or a green arrow. And what that will do is it will remove vehicles who are making left turn having to watch for gaps. And so we don't get as many left turn crashes. When in that traffic study that identified the crashes that are correctable by a signal, those are usually the ones that are most correctable, those left turn crashes. And a key way in which to do that is to only run the protected phases in times when that's appropriate. Of course, at the middle of the night, when there aren't a lot of conflicts and it is very easy to make that movement, they can run that flashing yellow, and the traffic engineers that will be timing it, they can make adjustments on the fly as needed. So we just give them options by providing that flashing yellow.
We have a question that came in specifically for Chris at Murray City. Chris, this question is anyone looking out for the residents of Atwood? I think that is a good one for you to address from the city's perspective. And we can weigh in on that as well, but please go ahead on that one.
Yes, well, so I can only kind of answer within my capacity within the engineering department. I can say first and foremost, I want to thank UDOT, Katie, Aaron, Marcus, and everyone else on this call for allowing and really reaching out to the residents for comments. This project is what I'd like to call Murray adjacent. It is, 45th South is UDOT Road. The intersections become owned by UDOT. We are not anticipating any capacity improvements as far as this intersection comes along. This is merely, in our opinion, in my opinion, particularly, it's here to improve safety. Our role as the city is quite limited, and we are doing utility relocations and providing input to protect what city right of way will be affected by this, whether it be easements or for utilities. So that's our general concerns. Again, I don't feel that this is going to drastically impact Atwood. We have no improvements to add capacity, and the city currently has no plans to make any changes further south than the single parcel that they're showing here.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. I think we're caught up on the questions that have come in so far. It sounds like we do have at least one verbal comment that has been submitted. I'm going to go ahead and go to this page. I encourage anybody else who's on the line to go ahead and call in to get into the verbal comment queue. We've got one in the queue right now. We will go through some additional questions and answers after this that we've got ready, but we'll play the first one and see if we have any more come in. Go ahead and play that one, Molly.
Hello, my name is Camille Press, CAMILLEPRESS. I am a Murray resident and I strongly support this project. I appreciate the social media updates by Murray City on their Facebook and Twitter accounts. It is so important to upgrade roadways and intersections as traffic continues to increase for both driver and pedestrian safety, especially along 4500 South between State Street and 700 East. In Section 9 of the environmental study, if possible, I would like to see preventative measures taken for the potential of introducing or spreading invasive weed species, but I understand if that's not possible. Thank you for your time and for allowing me to submit a comment. Have a nice evening.
Okay, just a reminder, you can still call in to get into that queue for verbal public comments. Again, we won't be responding formally to each of those, but those will be addressed in the final environmental document that will be published. A couple of additional questions that we have. This is one that I think I'd love for Marcus to start with, and maybe Aaron to follow up with any additional information. Just some concerns about whether or not construction will, construction of this project when it happens would block access to businesses and residences. Is that something that we anticipate? Can you speak to that a little bit? Marcus first.
Yeah, so when we do these signal projects, it is so impressive how these contractors are able to limit impacts to the traveling public. They do a great job. And we're just now starting the process of developing the restrictions on the contractors and what they will and will not be able to do. So we don't have all the answers on what the impacts will be. We would anticipate that all roadways would be open at all times. We're planning on, I've been talking to Aaron about this and collaborating with kind of our construction experts. Right now, we're planning on keeping all accesses open at all times, at least half of them open. And so it is just three accesses that will, by the time the project's done, become two accesses that are being affected by this. And we are working with those property owners to develop those restrictions, and we'll be working with traffic and safety to develop those restrictions. But as far as limitations and impacts to 4500 South and Atwood, we would expect those to be very limited by this project because so much of the work will occur in the shoulders.
And just to clarify real quick, he'd mentioned half of the accesses. I think what he meant was that our intent is to keep half widths of the accesses open at all times, meaning that we don't intend blocking business owners from accessing their properties during this. And so we're going to be working with the contractors and our construction team to develop those specifications, and then we will work with the property owners as well. Again, there's 3 of them that are affected as far as accesses go. And we'll be working with them directly and letting them know, okay, this is what the plan is, and this is how we plan to move forward. So they'll be fully aware of that as well.
Great, thank you. We've got a couple questions, and actually the voicemail comment reminded me we've heard a few questions about the environmental study as part of this project. And Tyler, I'm hoping there's a few things you can help to address for everybody who's joining us. Why was an environmental study conducted as part of a project like this?
An environmental study is done on all UDOT projects. Anything larger than a maintenance project, we try to look at both the built and human environment and see what sort of impacts might occur. This one was a state study, so it's a state-funded project. It's very similar to any other environmental study. It looks at the same factors, everything from cultural impacts to invasive species to wildlife to public involvement and input. That's one of the reasons we're here today is to make sure that we have this discussion with impacted people. So.
Perfect. And in this case, Tyler, what was the outcome of the draft environmental study?
There is no significant impacts that will be long lasting for this area. Overall, this is very similar to many other projects we do throughout the valley, and that we can anticipate some impacts to cultural resources. However, that is minimal considering the scope of the project.
Great, thank you for that. It doesn't look like we have any additional voicemails in the queue just yet to play back into the meeting. I'll do another plug for anybody who's still on and would like to have their input heard publicly. To please jump onto this phone number, 855-925-2801. Enter code 5419, then star and then 2 to record your comment. We will be tracking this. If we don't have any voicemails in the queue within the next 10 or so minutes, we will wrap things up at that time if there's nothing else to be submitted formally. I do want to talk a little bit though about other ways that you can provide feedback. So after this meeting, if you review the materials again, talk with your neighbors or friends, have additional thoughts that you'd like to submit, we absolutely can take those comments in other ways. By email at 4500atwood@utah.gov, or you can actually mail comments in if you prefer. We have a comment form that's available under the supporting materials link on this page. You can download and print that, write a comment and send it to us. You can also contact our project team if you need a hard copy comment form, or actually just the materials you've seen tonight. If you would like to request hard copies, we can do that for you as well. I'm going to ask that Tyler speak a little bit to the comment period portion of this. It sounds like we may need to extend this slightly, and I'll let Tyler address that for us.
Yes, so for environmental studies, we have state mandated time periods that we have to adhere to for comment periods. For most projects of this size, if they have federal funding, it's actually just a 10-day comment period. So it would be May 14th. This being a state funded project, it ends up being a 30-day comment period. So this is something I should have caught early on and when I was reviewing this, but so that we are actually going to be extending this comment period out into June 4th, in order to get the comments from everybody, make sure that everyone can be heard and that we're adhering to those state requirements.
Thank you for that, Tyler. We will make sure that we update all of our communications and official things posted on our website to reflect that change, to keep the comment period open slightly longer to June 4th, like Tyler mentioned. Appreciate that clarification. A couple of other things kind of as we go, like I mentioned, we are available for additional information or questions at any point throughout this process. If you do want to request any information you've seen here via hard copy, our team can do that and deliver anything you'd like to you. We know that this platform is a little bit different, and while it's great for reaching a lot of folks, it can be a little bit of a challenge, and we want to make sure we break down those barriers the best that we can. You can contact our team at any time via hotline at 385-787-7182 or at 4500 Atwood at utah.gov. Doesn't look like we have any additional voicemails just yet. We'll go ahead and put that screen back on in case anybody jumps on and wants to provide input that way. Let's see, a couple of other questions. Marcus, I know you touched on this a little bit in the design, but the left turn lanes, what is the standard for how far back those go? And
Yeah, so right now with our current design speed, the standard is for them to go back 500 feet. And we are currently refining that and seeing if there will be any location specific adjustments for this location.
Perfect, thank you.
And just to clarify real quick, that's on Redwood Road. It would be 500 feet back on Redwood Road, but the other two.
Aaron, I thought you were making a joke, 4,500.
Excuse me, yeah, 4,500. I'm a little mixed up there, but that would be on 4,500 South, excuse me.
These ones here.
Yes, yeah, sorry. Atwood is the numbers I gave earlier. The northbound Atwood is extending. The queue is 60 to 70 feet long, and then there's a 100-foot taper in front of it.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it. Got just a couple of questions. You know, we talked at length just about the, properties that we have been in contact with in terms of right-of-way negotiation and the impacts that are happening there. Curious, Eric, if this is something you could speak to, if anyone's curious about UDOT's right-of-way process, where they could find more information about that. And how in general that typically works once an environmental document is signed.
Yes, I believe we've attached to this meeting a copy of our brochure for right-of-way acquisitions.
Correct.
In general, the process is that we will estimate the value of the property by an appraisal with a couple of circumstantial differences for minimal appraisals values. But in general, all of these will be appraised and the appraisal will be outside of UDOT, an independent appraiser, excuse me. They will estimate the value before and after, as well as any damages or items that have to be cured or fixed up on the property will be paid to the property owner, including the acquisition of the permanent land acquisitions. We will have a written offer made to the property owners, and we will go through a time period in which we work with the property owner to try to resolve all the issues that we can. So hopefully that outlines the basic process of that.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. We have another question that came in, and I think this is a clarification that we need to provide. Marcus, this one would be for you from a design perspective. The question is there room for 4 lanes on Atwood? I think we need to touch on that and kind of what the graphic and the diagram shows. And you let me know if you want me to jump out to the bigger design view.
So yeah, immediately maybe we switch to the other design view.
Sure.
But immediately at the intersection, it will be 3 lanes wide. And so we'll have the through and right turn lane on the far right, and then the left turn lane in the middle, and then the receiving lane. And it's important for us, so perhaps the shoulder was confused for an additional lane. We keep that shoulder there so that it provides room for vehicles that are turning so that they don't off track off the roadway. So yeah, there's 3 lanes on Atwood. Perhaps the question was about future for Atwood to the south, maybe. Yeah,
I think that could be a question, Chris. think
Yeah,
you've spoken to it a little
if I
bit.
may
but
add to that, so
Yeah.
further to the south, Atwood varies in width, and it varies in width between the segments from Vine to 48th, and likewise from Vine to Atwood, excuse me, from 48th to Atwood. Again, this is not a capacity project. The city is not, from our perspective, not looking at adding capacity because of this project. The widths vary from 33 feet to give or take 42, 45 feet. That is not room, in our opinion, for a 4-lane road in general. Any improvements the city will make in the future, again, I'll point to the murraytransportationplan.com. We are primarily, as a city, looking in the next decade or two about adding sidewalk and pedestrian safety down the road where it's lacking. But again, and there's opportunity to comment on that. That's not in our immediate plan, particularly not in the next 5 to 10 years. But the widths there aren't there any further south, particularly in the section between 48th and 45th on Atwood to add any additional lanes or capacity.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. And thanks, Marcus, for the input as well. We don't have any additional voicemail comments in the queue right now. I want to give people a couple more minutes to have that opportunity to be able to jump on and leave a verbal comment. Looks like we're caught up in our chat box Q&A also. Please let us know if there's anything we have not been able to address so far. Again, we'll be extending our comment period out to June 4th, and we'll get some updated communication out about that. After that comment period is completed and Tyler's team reviews everything, like I mentioned before, any formal comments that we receive, like the voicemail we received tonight, or those that have come to us via email or mail, those will be reviewed and responded to, and those responses will be published in the final environmental document that we'll have available on this public hearing site, as well as our project website for the public to be able to access at any time. I have a question for Aaron. We talked a little bit about this being a state study. Tyler touched on that. But Aaron, can you describe a little bit about how the funding was prioritized and allocated for this project, where the funding is coming from?
Yeah, originally it was just a signal project. And that's really what it is. But then there were some components that increased the price quite a bit. And that is combining the two driveways on the north, and then also adding some extra room for a right turn lane or a left turn lane, depending on how you want to look at it, on the south leg. And so there was some signal money identified for it. It did warrant that, but there was substantial additional money that was needed. And so UDOT put it on its priority list, and UDOT has a way of identifying a lot of projects around the region, around the state, and then it prioritizes them. And this happened to be one that they prioritized very high. And so it received additional funding. State funding was added to it. Signal money is state funded, and there was additional state money added to it so that we could actually make the improvements that we're showing today. And so that's kind of how it came to be.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Just checking through everything to make sure we don't have anything new coming in, nothing yet. I think if we don't see any new voicemails coming into the queue by 6:20, I think we'll wrap things up. Again, it's not the only opportunity to provide feedback and comments or to view the materials that we saw today. This entire meeting and everything shared today is being recorded. Will be available at the hearing site that you're on right now viewing this, as well as UDOT's YouTube channel. For future viewing, please share that with neighbors or friends as appropriate. We'll be accepting public comment all the way through June 4th, and we'll update that information on our website as we go. Is there anything else our presenters would like to add as part of the information today, or anything you'd like to incorporate before we sign off?
One thing I would say is that, and this has been mentioned briefly, but on 4500 South, I think everyone around that road would like vehicles to go slower. I think there is a lot of consensus around that. And I'm hopeful that this helps influence that. It's not something that can be consistently predicted, but I'm hopeful that it helps vehicles go slower. Just a side note.
No, I appreciate that, Marcus. And I'm wondering if you don't mind, I know we talked about kind of those safety numbers, just to kind of hit that home again, some of the data that we have that we're trying to address here in terms of crashes and pedestrian crashes too. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, so when we look, I guess I'll say the bigger numbers and work to the smaller numbers. So the data that's been analyzed recently is over the last 10 years. And as far as vehicles go, the traffic study identified that 32 crashes over the last 10 years may have been mitigated or avoided as a result of a signal being present. And that we could expect some kind of similar performance going forward. I believe that was of 92 crashes at this location, that 32 of them may have been prevented by a signal. And then with the study that focused on pedestrians, there were 8 crashes that involved pedestrians, 4 of which were severe. Often when crashes involve pedestrians, we see a greater distribution of severe crashes when they involve a pedestrian, for widely apparent reasons. But and of those 4, one of them was a fatality. So, and again, anytime there's crash data like that, it comes into the region traffic engineer's office, and they are always looking for ways to mitigate these problems. And that's what's brought them back to this location many times to try to find improvements.
Thank you, Marcus. That's helpful. And I think kind of goes back to that community benefit, I think, that we're all trying to reach between the department and the city, and really focusing on the safety of this intersection for everybody using it, drivers, pedestrians, those who live nearby or travel through and commute through the area. Is top priority. So thank you for that information there. Looks like we're still good. We're all caught up. I did want to mention something that Macy on our team put a link to that Murray transportation plan that Chris was talking about into the chat for those who are attending the public meeting. So that link is there if you'd like to learn more information about future transportation plans and improvements within the city. You can click on that link there. Thanks for doing that, Macy. Helpful information. We can also put that into the supporting documentation on our site too. So we are just past 6:20, about to 6:25. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up now. We really appreciate everybody's participation, appreciate our panelists for helping us out today to answer these questions and present the information to the community. Thank you to those folks that have joined us live and brought these questions and comments to our attention. Like I mentioned, we will be going through all of these, responding to them formally as part of the environmental process, and we'll keep the comment period open until June 4th. So thank you so much. If you need to contact us between now and then, please contact us by phone or email. Phone number 385-787-7182 and email at 4500atwood@utah.gov. Thanks, everybody.